CNN ran a story a few weeks back about a guy, Gen Z, early 20s, who goes on a few dates with a girl. And he decides he's just not feeling it, which is totally normal. Happens every day. But where it gets weird, well, he couldn't figure out how to tell her. Like, he physically could not construct a text message that said, "Hey, I'm not interested." Because, of course, he couldn't say it to her face. So what did he do? Well, he did what every other Gen Zer in 2026 would do. He went to his friend, ChatGPT. He typed in his situation, his feelings, the whole thing, and his robot AI spit out a rejection text for him to send. So he copied it, he pasted it, added a little emoji to, and I quote, "make it sound more human," and then he hit send. And you know what happened? The girl ended up even more confused. She couldn't tell from the AI written message whether he wanted to be friends with her or he was just breaking things off entirely. The thing he went to a robot to fix, the robot made worse. Now look, today's episode is not telling you this story to dunk on some random kid. We're telling you this story because it's unfortunately not random at all. It's a symptom of something much, much bigger. And if we don't start paying attention to it, it's going to start tearing this country apart in ways that nobody is really talking about. So let's start with the numbers and buckle up because they're rough. The Survey Center on American Life ran a major study and found that only 56% of Gen Z adults have ever been in a romantic relationship during their teenage years. Compare that to baby boomers, 78%, Gen X, 76%. We're talking about a generation where nearly half of them have hit adulthood having never navigated asking someone out, being rejected, compromising with a partner, or having the awkward, "what are we?" conversation. And for Gen Z men specifically, it's even worse. 44% of Gen Z men report having zero relationship experience during their entire adolescence. That's double the rate of older men. Now, here's where I need you to put on your sales brain for a second, because dating is sales. And I've been saying this for years. It's the original discovery call. You're qualifying, you're reading body language, you're handling objections, you're figuring out, is there a mutual fit? And sometimes you're going to get a hard no, and you're going to learn how to move on without letting it wreck your life. And that's not me being cute. That's literally the finding of an NYU psychologist, Tessa West, whose research showed a direct link between the decline in romantic relationships and workplace performance. She went on to tell Fortune that these skills you develop in these early relationships, negotiation, compromise, handling discomfort, those are the exact skills that predict how well you perform at work. And Gen Z skipped all that training. So what's happening instead? Well, a Harris poll found that 65% of Gen Z employees admit they struggle to make basic conversation with colleagues. We're not talking about presentations in front of an entire boardroom. Not talking about intense negotiations. We're talking about basic conversation. 70% of business leaders in the intelligence survey said Gen Z graduates show up to the workplace unprepared, and the number one reason they cited? Communication skills. They can't ask for a raise. They can't request PTO without sending an email instead of walking down the hall to go talk to Susan. They can't handle the friction of someone disagreeing with them in a meeting. They take it as a personal affront. And it gets wilder. Add AI to the equation. A Resume.org survey from 2025 found that 76% of full-time Gen Z workers use AI chatbots, and of that group, and this is the really eye-opening part, 94% said they use AI to navigate workplace issues, meaning 7 in 10 rely on AI specifically for workplace conflicts. 6 in 10 Gen Z workers now talk to AI more than they talk to their actual coworkers. I let that sink in for a second. More than half of Gen Z view ChatGPT or Claude as something beyond a tool. 27% call it their assistant. 13% call it a friend. 9% call it their therapist. And 1/3 of Gen Z workers have told AI something they've never told another human being. So we've got a generation that never learned to date, can't communicate at work, and is now outsourcing their emotional intelligence to a language model that literally can't read a room. You see where this is going, right? Now, if this were just a workplace problem, that'd be bad enough. Companies would figure it out, though, because HR would run some training and people would adapt, right? Well, you'd hope. But this isn't just a workplace problem. This is actually a political radicalization problem, and it's happening on both sides simultaneously, and almost nobody is connecting these dots. See, let's start with the loneliness data because it's the foundation of everything. The former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy declared loneliness a national epidemic in 2023, and he compared the health effects of chronic loneliness to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And that's not metaphorical. The CDC links loneliness to increased risks of heart disease, stroke, dementia, depression, and premature death. And who's loneliest? Gen Z, by a mile. Cigna's 2025 Loneliness in America survey found that 57% of all Americans report being lonely. But among Gen Z, 73%. Gallup found that 1 in 4 young men in America report feeling lonely daily, higher than any other demographic in the country, higher than elderly people living alone, higher than single parents. Young men, 29% of adults under 30 say they feel lonely all or most of the time, according to an NBC News poll. That's nearly 1 in 3. So you've got a generation that never learned to connect romantically, they can't communicate professionally, and they talk to robots more than humans, and now they're drowning in loneliness. So now what happens when millions of lonely, isolated, socially underdeveloped people go looking for answers? Well, they find community online in the worst possible places. So let's talk about the men first, because this is where the mainstream conversation usually stops. The incel pipeline, well, it's real. And I don't mean incel, the way it's casually thrown around on Twitter as an insult. I mean the clinically researched documented pathway where lonely, socially isolated young men, many of whom have genuinely never had a romantic or sexual relationship, find their way into online communities that validate their pain. And then slowly, methodically, radicalize that pain into hatred. A 2025 study, the largest primary investigation of incel communities to date, recruited 561 self-identified incels from the US and UK. And the findings were devastating. 48% selected the highest possible response on every single loneliness measure. A fifth reported daily suicidal thoughts. Nearly half still lived with their parents, and 18% were not in education, employment, or job training. And here's the thing. These aren't the cartoon villains the internet makes them out to be. These are deeply lonely, deeply hurting human beings who went looking for someone, anyone, who understood what they were going through. And what they found instead were forums where that loneliness gets weaponized, where the narrative shifts from, I'm struggling, to the world owes me something now, where misogynistic language, real misogynistic language, becomes normalized, where rejection gets reframed not as a normal human experience, but as evidence of a broken system that's rigged against you. Research published in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology found that prolonged exposure to incel content was linked to increased depression, anxiety, and aggressive tendencies. 45% of participants reported violent ideation after extended viewing. And the algorithms? They don't help. A University of Cambridge study tracked 1,000 young men on TikTok and found that algorithmic exposure to manosphere content increased misogynistic attitudes by 50% over just 3 months. And there are very well documented pipelines here. Researchers have literally mapped how users of pickup artist forums eventually migrate to these incel forums. Young men, many with autism spectrum traits, many who are just painfully shy, try to navigate dating with crude tactics they learned online, fail, and then get funneled deeper into communities that tell them the game was rigged from the start. And the scholars who study this call it the 3N model of radicalization: needs, networks, and narratives. You have an unmet psychological need. You find a network that acknowledges that need, and then you adopt the narrative that network provides. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because that's exactly how bad political messaging works too. Now, here's where we're going to talk about the other side of this, because the women's version of this radicalization is just as real, just looks a little different. Gallup data from 2024 showed that women ages 18 to 29 are now 15 percentage points more liberal than their male counterparts. Young women have shifted 10 points to the left in just the last 10 years. Men, barely 2 points. The Survey Center on American Life found that among Democrats, 74% of women believe men have it easier in society. The American Enterprise Institute called this one of the most significant political realignments of our time. Young men and women increasingly sorted into opposing ideological and political camps. And here's the thing. For young women who are also lonely, also isolated, also spending more time online than in meaningful human relationships, the radicalization pipeline works the exact same way as it does for their male counterparts. Different content, different narratives, same 3N model. The need is real. They feel unheard, unsafe, unseen. So they find networks online that validate those feelings, and the narrative they adopt becomes increasingly catastrophized. Everything is an existential threat. Every interaction is filtered through the lens of systematic oppression. Every disagreement becomes evidence of the patriarchy. See, when lonely, socially isolated people, men or women, consume nothing but ideologically reinforcing content, when their only community is an algorithm that feeds them more of what makes them angry, when they've never had to sit across from someone who thinks differently and work through the discomfort of disagreement, you don't get nuance. You get extremism. You get men who believe women are the enemy and women who believe men are the enemy, living in the same country, working in the same offices, supposedly building a future together, except they can't even have a conversation. And this is what keeps me up at night, because we're not just talking about awkward first dates and bad workplace communication here. What we're talking about is the complete erosion of the social infrastructure that a functioning democratic republic requires. Self-governance doesn't work if people can't talk to each other, if they can't negotiate, if they can't handle the friction of disagreement without retreating to their algorithmically curated safe spaces. I mean, guess what? Every skill that we talked about that dating teaches you, and every skill that sales teaches you, reading body language, handling rejection gracefully, finding common ground with someone who sees the world differently, asking good questions instead of making assumptions. Those are the skills that make a free and high trust society possible. And we have an entire generation that never developed those skills. Not because they are broken, not because they're lazy, but because the system they grew up in, the phones, the algorithms, pandemic, the frictionless convenience of modern life, the proverbial easy buttons, they never required them to do so. You can order food without talking to a person. You can work without ever seeing a colleague. You can date without ever leaving your couch. You can resolve a conflict by asking a chatbot instead of looking someone in the eye. And now, you can radicalize politically without ever having to defend your position to a real human being who pushes back. So what do we do about it? Well, I'll tell you what I think, and it starts with something I've been saying for years on this show. You have to meet people where they're at. See, that's not just a sales strategy. It's a survival strategy for civilization. We need to stop treating communication as a soft skill and start treating it as a survival skill. Schools should teach negotiation. Workplaces should invest in it the same way they invest in software training. Parents need to get their kids off the screens and into uncomfortable social situations, not because it's fun, but because it's practice. And on the political side, we need to stop screaming at the other side from behind our screens and start doing the hard, messy, uncomfortable work of actually talking to people we disagree with in real life. Not to win, not to convert, but to understand. Because the alternative, where men and women retreat further into their ideological corners online, outsource their emotional lives to AI, and then lose the ability to connect across differences, that doesn't end with a political realignment. That ends with a society that simply can't hold itself together, and I refuse to accept that. And speaking of things that matter for your well-being, well, look, if we're talking about the importance of taking care of yourself, body and mind, I got to give a shout out to my friends over at Cardio Miracle. This is a nitric oxide supplement that has genuinely been a game changer for me on my own health journey. So if you're looking to support your heart health, your energy, and your overall performance, head over to my friends at cardiomiracle.com and use my link here, TBNS, and trust me, you'll feel the difference. Scan that little QR code over my shoulder, or one more time, cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. All right, folks. So that's today's show. And here's what I need you to do. Share this episode, not because I'm asking for the downloads, although yes, please, but because someone in your life needs to hear this. A parent, a manager, a young person who's struggling and doesn't know why. The loneliness crisis isn't someone else's problem. It's our problem. And the only way out of it is through connection. Real connection. The kind that's uncomfortable and messy and totally worth it. If you enjoyed this episode, and I hope it made you think, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and if you want to keep the conversation going, find me over on social media, links in the show, or you can follow me at @BNicholsLiberty. And as always, meet people where they're at. It's how we sell. It's how we connect. And it might just be how we save this whole thing. I'm Brian Nichols. And with that being said, I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.